Okay, so in this video now we're pretty much building on our discussion from the functions, but we're going to try and look at it and the code without using functions and maybe get a little bit of a comparison from that. Now, one thing I didn't do in the last video was just give a run through of the system working. So essentially the code for this task and the previous task is different because one's using a function, one's not using the function, but the visual output or the working of the circuit is going to be the exact same thing. Okay, it's just the code technique is different. So let's play this here and we'll just see what we have. Again, on our setup, look, there's a potentiometer, there's a push button, we've got a power supply, and then here's our stepper motor here. Okay, now the driver board chip and stuff is just off screen, just to make it a little bit neater. Now you'll see if I push the button, you see the motor just turns there ever so slightly. Okay, so it's turning a small amount of rotation. But now look, if I twist the potentiometer, it will turn more. So remember we said this potentiometer is going to change how much this, how much we want to specify this motor to turn. So I've turned it quite a bit there, and you'll see it'll go around closer to maybe, I don't know, 360 or whatever it is. So if we turn this dial the full way around, it will turn 360 degrees, and if we turn it full way the other way, it will turn no degrees, or maybe just a very small amount. So you see it's actually not turning there, very small amount. So we just increase it a little bit more, and there we go, we get a small bit of rotation. Let's see, there's a very small angle there. So we have a very flexible solution. Remember previously if we wanted to change how much this was turning, we had to code it differently. So we had to hook this up to the computer, go into the compiler and change it. Okay, but now we're given a bit of a user interface to change the angle. Okay, and the other things I'm just mentioning there is just make sure you get your the wiring of the push button correctly. That can go in correctly quite a bit, and then we should know how to wire up the potentiometer. So that's the way the system works, and whether you're using the functions or you're not using the functions, it should work the exact same way. The wiring is the same way. It's just how we code it is different. So you'll see here the wiring diagram is the same. So just quickly, we're going to look at, well, what if we didn't use functions? Okay, and maybe in this example you might say, well, Chris, this actually maybe just looks easier if we just don't bother going into the complications of the functions. And okay, maybe in this example you could be right, potentially. But again, we got to think about if our system gets bigger and bigger and we've more and more components in it, this main loop can get very large and quite complicated. And it can be hard to figure out which sections of our code deals with different aspects or different components on the board. So you'll see pretty much I've just squished everything back into our main loop. And I suppose the most obvious problem here is actually to do with all these brackets. Okay, and we've got a while loop, we've got a while loop, we've got a switch loop. So there's a lot of things that's happening, and especially with while loops you can get stuck in things like infinite loops, and you don't know whether one bit of code is starting or where you've gotten stuck in other bits of code. So it may look a little bit neater, but it can be a little bit harder to fault find. And look, if you're good at your indentation, you can maybe keep it lined up and follow where your brackets are missing or where they're not. But it does get a little bit more complicated, especially if our system is larger and we've more and more components in it. So what we try to do is we try and keep our main loop small, and we try to use a number of functions, a number of subroutines, so that we can group our code in different parts and we can ultimately change it and fault find it and keep it more flexible going forward. So like I said, the functionality is the exact same way. This system will still work, this is still valid, it's just not maybe good etiquette for programming going forward. In this example is maybe not too bad, but as we go forward and we look at more and more advanced stuff, you want to try and incorporate functions and subroutines into your code. So remember, a subroutine is just a function that doesn't maybe take inputs or give out an output back into the main program, whereas a function does, it takes in some inputs and it may or may not give back some output values to the main routine as well. Okay. So yeah, try them both out, get used to them, and see can you spot the difference, and hopefully it gives you a bit more flexibility going forward with your code.